Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Strength Agenda Radio. Happy holidays to everybody who celebrates and even to those who don't. Wish you all well. My name is Tom Soroka. The gentleman who looks like he is sitting on a pile of books right now to make himself appear taller is the beautiful and the ever loving John Ziegler. John, good morning. How you doing, bud?
Good, man. I'm surprised you knew I was sitting on a pile of books.
Well, as soon as you said you weren't in your office, because when we logged on, I was like, man, he looks like he's sitting taller in his chair. And then you said you weren't sitting in your office, and I was like, that's what it is.
No, it's actually, I think I'm in a different chair than normal.
That's what I'm
Uh,
saying.
but I'm also sitting more upright because I have a gnarly like kink in my shoulder and
Oh,
neck. So I'm a little more I'm a little
see,
more upright.
I'm slouching because my back still hurts from Daytona.
Oh God.
And that's when you texted me. You're like, can you be ready in 10 minutes? I'm like, yeah, but I'm almost done stretching. Like I literally have been having to stretch for like 20 minutes in the morning and mobilize
Oh
just to not
God.
like look like the Tin Man walking around my house or work and all that nonsense.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
I'm
to.
texting your wife right now.
All right, that's fair. Just so everybody knows, this is a regular thing.
It's always, yeah, I text John's wife all the time. She's one of my athletes. She's a great athlete, beautiful athlete, lifts a lot of
Yeah.
weight. She lifts a lot more on the clean and jerk than she does on the snatch.
That she does. That she does,
So
man.
much so that she medals in the clean and jerk more often
She
than she does in the
uh,
snatch.
she does. She does.
All right, so announcements. Any quick announcements we want to go over real quick? I will do the one since I did a video on it yesterday. If you did not see my
Okay.
social media, we have a macro calculator. We talked about it on one of actually the very first episodes here about like our little brainchild with the macro
Yeah.
calculator. And then John, with all of his internet acumen, was able to make it work, which is awesome. He sent me the first draft of it. I gave him some feedback, came back with the second draft of it, and it is awesome. I don't know of another calculator that does these things. I know a lot of people use like the RP templates, which those are phenomenal. I just simply think this is better, and I'm slightly biased, but I do genuinely think it's better. The big thing I liked about it, John and I talked, and I made a post about it, was like with working with the nutrition clients. So I'm precision nutrition certified, but we now have Coach Jess, who does a way better job than I ever could. She handles our nutrition. But the big thing that made me agree, or helped me agree to bring Jess on was the talk about, timing your macros with the day you train and the number of meals. John was able to take that brainchild and put it into this calculator. So not only do you get your rest day macros, you get your training day macros, which are pretty standard, and is a popular method used with Stronger U. We also were able to take your macros for your rest days and your training days and stuff like that, training days in particular, and base it around when you train in the day, whether it's early in the morning, late in the morning, early in the afternoon, late in the afternoon. And you can customize about how many meals you eat because not everybody is a psychopath and eats 5 to 6 meals a day. Some people are like me and they struggle to get 3 meals in a day because they're
Yeah.
constantly not paying attention. So if you are on the app, it is an upgraded feature, but it is well worth the upgrade because you get access to all of our programs, which I'm in the process of getting a bunch more put into the app. So you guys have even more options to access training wise. But then you get the Rep Max calculator, which I've already done a video on that, which is also one of the better ones that I've seen on the internet. Again, thanks to that beautiful man over there. And you get the Rep Max calculator as well. So that's the announcement I'm taking over simply because it's the one I know the most about. John, what else do we have?
We've got a bunch of holiday specials going on right now. So if you subscribe to the email list, you'll have an email in your inbox to check out what all the holiday specials are. So they're
Mhm.
great. I'm not telling you what they are here because you got to go subscribe to the email list to get the
Yeah.
information.
I'm
Yeah.
posting. Go to the business page. I have a story up already with a screenshot of the or not screenshot, but a reel or a post with the newsletter and a link to sign up for the newsletter, so you can do that. So,
Yeah.
see.
And then we did just put a gear section on the website that
Mm-hmm.
now has a bunch of stuff from Serious Steel Fitness
Mm-hmm.
that's on there, right? So their bands are freaking phenomenal. If you're one of those like gym owners that has a bunch of bands in there and they constantly snap because you're buying the super thin, cheap ones, grab some from Serious Steel Fitness. They're amazing, but there's
Yeah.
a bunch of other stuff in there as well. So go check that out. We have a new expanded number of offerings, and then uh, we've got new programs like Tom said that are going to be coming through on the app. So if you're on the app already, keep an eye out for those. When they get added on, they refresh when your
Yeah.
month subscription refreshes. And
We'll
yeah,
talk about and we'll talk about all those hopefully by the next episode. I'll have most of them done. We can chat about I'll give a rundown of each of the programs that we got coming up because we got like four or five, I think, big ones
yeah,
that all deserve their own time, but we just don't want to smash it here. We also don't want to take too much of your time there. But yeah,
yeah. Let's move on.
go to www.thestrengthagenda.com, check out all the stuff, sign up for the newsletters, start your free trial on the app, get access to all the goodies that John and I are putting our blood, sweat, and tears into so we can stop sitting on books and doing podcasts from dining room kitchen chairs. Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Great. Thanks. Moving on. Want to talk. I texted John about this morning. It started an argument, and we're like, yeah, we're doing this on the for the first 10 minutes, which I am going to set a timer because I did get a complaint that we talked, though there was one day we did a baseball talk and we talked way too long about baseball,
you know
supposedly.
what? For those of you that don't like baseball, that don't like college football, that don't like those kinds of sports, and we talk about
I'm
them,
setting a timer, and we are going to stick to the timer before we move on to what people actually came here.
I just want to say, right? Just
Timer is
deal with
started.
it. Yeah. All right. Fine.
All
We're
right,
moving
so
on.
I have my appropriate hat on. With today is the start of the college football playoff. For those who don't know, college football last year moved to a 12-team playoff, which has been the best thing for college football in terms of we get just great games for about 3 to 4 weeks. It's awesome. Last year, I had the distinct pleasure of watching my Notre Dame Fighting Irish go all the way to the national championship game, despite all of the stuff that people didn't think they were going to be able to do. This year, they were left out of the playoff unjustly. And I figured we talked to John about all of the college football playoff in terms of predictions and stuff like that. But John was talking shit about Notre Dame, so we're addressing that shit first. Because he said that they didn't make it to the playoff because they were too stubborn to join a conference. Fun facts for all of you who don't know, I am an avid Notre Dame fan, and I only deal in facts and absolutes here. Notre Dame has tried joining a conference multiple times. Back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, they tried joining the Big Ten multiple times, five to be exact, and the Big Ten rejected them because they were a hardcore religious institution and they didn't want that in their conference. So what did Notre Dame do? They went out and they just started with the mentality of we will play anybody, anywhere, anytime, which is why they stayed independent. And then that's why they started playing at USC, Navy. The Navy rivalry is a really cool history that I've posted about before.
Yeah.
Um, Army, all of these other games. That's why their schedule has always been so sporadic in terms of who they play. But because they went out and they did the whole we'll play anybody, anywhere, anytime, they started to build a national brand. NBC came on, was like, hey, we'd like to do a TV deal. They were the first college with a TV deal. And that NBC contract has been huge. That was NIL before NIL. It's pumping money into the school. And long story short, they built themselves up into this national brand. And after they got big and popular, the Big Ten then was like, hey, we'd like to have you as part of our conference. Only problem, we have the Big Ten network. You have to share rights with your NBC deal with the rest of the Big Ten conference, which at the time I think had expanded to 12 teams. Notre Dame said, go kick rocks, decided not to. Fast forward to 2020, they needed to play in a conference in order to be eligible for the regular season. So they are ACC with every other sport except football, which in their agreement, they have to play five ACC schools a year, which they thought would meet the conference requirement, which get people to shut up about the conference thing. And in 2020, they played in the actual ACC conference, played a full ACC schedule, made it to the ACC championship game. I think they ended up getting like blown out by Clemson or something like that, but they made it to the ACC championship game. They then applied for conference application or membership or whatever after that 2020 season. The ACC said no. So then after this last year, I think they're going to end up leaving the ACC, and I hope they do because they don't need it. Everybody's all upset with them because they're not in a conference. But at the end of the day, I'm going to explain it like this. Last year in the college football playoff, Notre Dame made something along the lines of like 25 million playing in the playoff. Same as Ohio State. You get money each round of the playoff,
Yeah.
and then if you win, you get more. The only difference between Notre Dame and Ohio State was Ohio State had to split their 25 million with the big 42, and Notre Dame got to keep all 25 million to themselves because they were independent. So explain to me from a business standpoint why they would join a conference when they don't have to split that with everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like I'm giving you shit about
I
it,
know.
but it's so I love college football and college football playoff
It's
season.
the best.
Yeah, it really is, man. Like I get animated. I love football in general, right?
Yes.
I'm closely watching and rooting for the Denver Broncos this year, because they
I
have Bo
want I,
Nix,
I want a Bears Broncos Super Bowl so
right?
bad. I'm going to be an agent of chaos here in Colorado.
But I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
where University of Oregon Ducks are from. What people don't realize is there was a stretch of time where the U of O was one of the worst teams
Yes.
in college football for decades and decades and decades. And then we got super lucky. We had a good season in 92,
Hmm.
93. We
Yeah,
had one
no,
of these
it was 92 because that
Penn
was
State.
well,
Penn,
I was say I knew the Notre Dame was in the national championship against Colorado that year.
no.
And
And
that was the first time Oregon, everybody's like, Oregon who?
yeah, and I think Oregon went to the Rose Bowl against Penn State, got hammered by Penn State,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But then, we attracted Coach Mike Bellotti. Bellotti came in, elevated University again, and we got Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly took us to a whole nother level, and then we started gaining like real recognition. And of course, that's when
The
film.
Chip Kelly years though, correct me, was that when Nike started their uniform stuff or was it before Chip Kelly?
Nope. Chip Kelly was kind of the dawn of like Phil Knight coming in and saying, we're gonna just do all this. We're like Phil Knight came in and he's like, I want my alma mater to do well. Tell me what you need. And Nike money just started pouring into the freaking football team.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
I will say this, like, so I was in, I think it was my senior year of high school was when that started, 2005-ish, like 2003, 2004, 2005 is when that started. And then by the time I got to college, Oregon became a national phenomena based solely on what uniform were they wearing.
yep,
Like coolest uniforms hands down. Like I'm a Notre Dame fan and I love those gold helmets, but like I genuinely I follow there's an Instagram, I can't see it because of the background, but there's
yeah,
an Instagram page that I follow that simply just posts about Oregon's uniforms for the week and like all the little like intricacies that go into like the designs and stuff that Nike
yeah,
does. Like they're wearing their old school yellow and green this weekend. I'm gonna watch that. I love it.
yeah,
But yeah, or like I genuinely feel like the Phil Knight deal. I don't call it the Nike deal because Phil Knight personally
yes,
was involved in that. That revolutionized college football in terms of
100%, dude.
like,
Yeah,
'cause, like, I remember ESPN they either did a 30 for 30 or they did a whole like vignette on like the whole look good, feel good, play good like
yeah.
mantra and how Oregon and Nike just completely changed that
So
landscape.
yeah, and so I got to back up because I think that if I and I might be remembering wrong, I think Bellotti was still coaching when Nike and Phil Knight came in because Joey Harrington uh
Yes. Yes.
was playing and they wound up winning the Fiesta Bowl. I remember it was fucking chaos in Eugene. We lost our shit. Like
Yeah, yeah.
everybody
It
watching
was,
that game.
and it was the I don't know if the Fiesta Bowl was when they won, but I remember like there's a picture. It might have been when they won like the Pac-12 or whatever, or played in the Pac-12 championship game. But they had those black and silver, the black and
Uh,
silver with the silver wings on the helmets, and I was like, okay, like, and that was the first time they had done
Yeah,
nothing. They had done a uniform that
that
wasn't.
was that was Chip Kelly. Like
No, but
Bellotti's a
there's a picture of Joey Harrington wearing it.
really? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm almost
I'd have to
like
find that one.
I just remember like Joey Harrington when he played at Oregon, that was he played on the team that was the first time they wore something that wasn't green.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think it was because they did a black uniform, like a predominantly black
Yeah.
uniform. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm a University of Oregon fan. So we, however, being a University of Oregon fan comes with that long history of not winning. And so if
Yes.
you're an old school University of Oregon fan, you kind of go through every college football season with the anticipation of we're going to blow a game somewhere that keeps us from realizing like the ultimate dream.
Right,
And
right, right. That
last year, we went 13 and 0 in our first Big Ten like appearance. Kind of, we had some tough games, but really kind of rolled on through
hmm
thanks to again, like we had Dylan Gabriel, who, isn't going to be an NFL starter, but did
He was no
great.
Bo Nix.
No, he's no bonus. And then they get to the first draw and they get fucking Ohio State again, which was BS. And we had to travel to Ohio to like play Ohio State. So, that went sideways. So this year we lost to Indiana.
Yeah, that was a
And
great game.
That was a great game. And I'm going to be honest, like last year I was nervous about Indiana and we didn't play them. And what Indiana has done and Coach Kurt Signetti, guys,
Windiana, baby.
the,
Windiana.
the dude's a just shit talker galore. But what he's
I,
done with
I
that
love his shit.
program,
Even though I have a shirt trolling him from when they played Notre Dame last year, I love Kurt Cinetti. Like I love the smack talk because it's not like it's not smack talk if it's true.
right?
You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Like that's my thing. Like
100%, dude. Yeah.
the whole
Uh,
like Google me, I win. He's not wrong. So I saw something the other day. He's got like something like an 84% win percentage as a head coach
uh-huh.
between IUPUI, JMU, and now
Yeah.
Indiana. Like Indiana, his first two seasons, he's lost two games.
Yeah.
It's
No,
yeah.
he's lost more than that
He lost
because
to
he
Ohio
lost.
State. He lost to Ohio State, and then he lost to Notre Dame in the playoff, and they haven't lost this year.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're right. They've lost two games. God, man, they're just and you're right. Like, I mean, Mendoza's a big part of that.
Hmm.
He's a great quarterback. And
I don't think I don't think he should have won the Heisman, but he's a great quarterback. Oh, there's a
yeah,
timer.
I was that the timer already?
Yeah, we're good. Keep going.
All right. So if you're watching this and you're like, get on to the other stuff, let's just roll through this really
Well,
quick.
real quick before we go, college football playoff predictions.
Yes,
Like,
that's what I was gonna say.
talk about your semifinal and then obviously the final and the championship. Who do you think your final four is going to be? Who's your final two, and who do you think's winning? Real quick.
All right, so University of Oregon is obviously going to beat James Madison,
Yeah.
right? And we're going to roll into the next round. That next round, I don't know, it's kind of up for grabs. I got to
Right.
say, I think we're going to see Ohio State win. Um, you know, I'm going to say it. I think Indiana wins,
Hmm.
right, in the next round. Um, fuck, I got to be honest, like Texas, not the
Yeah.
Longhorns, right?
No.
But is it Tech? Is it Texas
Yeah.
Tech? A&M. A&M that's in, right?
Yeah.
They look pretty solid too. And then I'm gonna go with Oregon
Okay.
because I
Well,
can't.
that's fair. So my final four, I feel like I have Indiana, Texas Tech. I think A&M is going to beat Ohio State, personally.
Ooh, okay.
And then just because of all the nonsense that went on, I'm pulling for Ole Miss out of the other side. And then between Tech, like I think that Texas Tech Indiana game is going to be the
I
pseudo
think
national
it's
championship.
yeah.
I like that's a coin flip, but I'm going Indiana. I think if it's the 1-4, 2-3, whatever, I think it's going to end up being Indiana and A&M in the national championship, and I think Indiana's winning. I hate that Texas Tech is on the other side because I think Indiana Texas Tech it should be the national championship game, but I also would not be surprised if we get Ohio State Indiana as the
I wouldn't
national
be
championship
surprised if we
game.
wound up with that either. The things that I want to see is like Texas Tech and Oregon are going to be a good
Yes.
game. I'd love
Texas,
to see.
like I'm
I
gonna
got to
call it
pull
right
for
now.
Oregon,
I'm gonna call
but
it right now. Texas Tech, Oregon is going to be the game of the year.
yeah, it's going
I
to be
genuinely
phenomenal.
believe that. Yeah.
Indiana, I can't wait to see Indiana like roll over Alabama or Oklahoma because
Yes.
I cannot fucking stand all the like
I think,
love that Alabama still gets
yeah.
despite like, being a
Personally,
okay
personally,
team.
I like everybody's complaining about the G5s being in Tulane and JMU. I
Yeah.
personally feel like Notre Dame and Miami should have both been in over Alabama. And it's simply for this one game. You look at, or two games, you look at Arkansas and how Notre Dame played Arkansas and how the rest of the SEC played Arkansas. Like Notre Dame went into Arkansas, beat the brakes off them.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
the rest of the SEC has struggled with them at home. And
Yep.
then you look at Florida State. Florida State went into Alabama, beat the brakes off them.
Yep.
Miami went into Florida State and beat the brakes off of them. End of
Hmm.
discussion. Anyways,
Yep.
let's move on to our next topic here.
All right.
We were talking, you and I. Well, this is kind of like a long drawn out conversation because we've had a couple of chats about this from like when we were talking about the affiliate programming stuff in terms of CrossFit, and then you and I had a conversation earlier while I was walking through a thrift store
Yeah.
about I didn't buy those pants, by the way. Um, but
Oh,
they
that's a
weren't my
disappointment.
size. They weren't my size. But I'm now on the lookout. I'm probably gonna go there
Yeah.
once a week and find.
Yeah.
But we were talking about stronger equals better. And
Yes.
in particular, one of the things, because I'm starting to do the goal setting, I'm starting to talk to people about like next year, what we need to work on. And then I've got my own clients that I work with at Lifetime, and we're kind of talking about all those things. We're talking about overhead strength
Yep.
in terms of from a powerlifting standpoint. I've got a couple guys that want to get into powerlifting, and they're like, why are you doing so much overhead work and not more bench press work? And so I did a little experiment with one of my guys where I have a bench test that we do. And so we rotated the exercises. I'm a big conjugate fan. You know this, a lot of people
Yep,
know
got it.
this. And so I
Same.
rotate a lot of main exercises, pin presses, overhead presses, seated presses, push press, banded work, all that nonsense. And there was roughly a 12-week gap between doing this one specific bench exercise that I have them doing, and the guy put 50 pounds on the exercise for a set of
Yeah.
five. And it was just
Yep.
one of those situations where he was like, okay, I get it now. So I messaged you this morning. I thought this would be a great topic to talk about in terms of overhead pressing and why it is so important. So, John, from your perspective, in terms of working with, a variety of athletes from weightlifters to CrossFit to Gen Pop, with your time at Golds and all that stuff,
Yeah.
what are your benefits, or why do you emphasize overhead pressing so much?
Man, there's so many benefits to it. And so let's kind of I want to approach it from the like bench side of things
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
brought up the bench, right? And we know growing up as guys, like the thing that guys get measured on early on in life is like how much can you bench?
Before CrossFit, that was always when I told him I was a
That was,
weightlifter, that was the
yeah,
question.
that was the question, right? Everybody, like, if you wanted to have the conversation about like who was the big dog in the gym, it was always how much can you bench? Now that's changed over time thanks to CrossFit and,
Yep,
weightlifting being more involved, because of all those things. And we're, now it's more like, well, how much do you squat? What do you deadlift? What do you bench? Isn't as big of a question, but it is still something that people like care
100%.
about. However, the reason that I think that overhead pressing is superior to benching, right, is, and I talked about this in our squat conversation around the overhead squat,
Yeah,
and that is toe to tip. You have to brace and have a certain level of overall core strength and stability to
hmm,
be able to really move weight overhead.
yeah,
And that is going to translate better into your bench, then your bench will translate into your overhead pressing, right? Also, I'm a firm believer in when you see somebody who has like a weak overhead press, you're probably not looking at like, oh, we got to work on triceps more, or oh, we got to work on pecs more, or oh, we got to do whatever. It's an easier way to look at somebody and say, you're fucking compensating.
hmm,
Like your right side is
yeah,
compensating for a
yeah,
weaker left side.
yep,
Okay, let's fix that. We got to make your shoulders stronger. Like
yep,
there's,
yep,
you know, and then for people who aren't, for everybody that's like doing CrossFit, right? That translation, it should be a really simple one for you,
hmm,
right? That a stronger overhead press, right, means a stronger jerk. And I'm going to call it a power jerk because it's not a push jerk. Push jerk was a phrase that CrossFit brought in,
hmm,
um, which you see often in terms of like Metcons, those kinds of things.
yeah,
Also, your gymnastics movements,
yeah.
right? You are not going to have a good handstand walk. You're not going to have solid handstand push-ups. You're not going to have safe handstand push-ups,
Bar
right?
muscle up,
Bar
lockout,
muscle up, lockout, right? Ring muscle up, lockout. Because again, if you're just relying on bench to build
your
that
ring
ability,
dips.
yeah, all of that, right, involves a level of shoulder stability too and strength that you're not going to get out of laying on a bench and benching. And don't get me
Agreed.
wrong, man, benching is fun. I love
Hmm.
bench pressing. Who doesn't love like hopping down on a bench? Let's go ahead and let's hit a bench set. But I know you don't. But dollar for dollar, if I'm legitimately trying to build my pressing strength
Hmm.
and the ability to hit a heavier jerk, the ability to feel more stable overhead, the ability to improve anything that involves a lockout position with my arms,
Hmm.
I want an overhead press. Plus, with the
Yeah,
overhead press, I can switch to dumbbells. I can do seesaw dumbbell presses, right, to help iron out those like individual oddities
yeah,
of like, oh, look, my left arm tends to go out
yep,
here and
yep.
do this crazy thing. So I mean, yeah, when we're talking about pressing, and I'll just say from a physique standpoint, if you're one of those people that's like, I want my physique to really stand out, I have seen better improvements in musculature in the
Hmm.
chest and shoulders and triceps through overhead
Oh yeah.
overhead pressing than through benching,
Yeah.
because benching targets specific areas unless you're adjusting and doing like an incline bench. Well, let's,
Right. Right. Right.
but when you take that to strict pressing, right? We're using that top
Yeah.
end
You're still,
half
yeah. Well, and that
of
was
our chest.
and that was kind of my thing. So going back to your thing of like your big, takeaway from it, mine is even simpler than yours, but very close. And it's just simply posture. And
Yeah.
this was through self-exploration. So like for those who might not have ever like seen me in person or anything like that, I have a kyphotic curve in my upper back. Had
Mm,
it since I was a kid, could have gotten it corrected, didn't. Like and for those who don't know what a kyphotic curve is, essentially like hunchback syndrome.
yeah.
And so, like, through sports, like I always had shoulder pain, had upper body pain. I did a ton of bench pressing in high school, like everybody else did, because that was one of our maxes. Um, and it was just one of those situations where when I got to college, the guy who was in charge of our strength and conditioning, he did a lot more overhead pressing, and I had done hardly any overhead pressing. Like we did military presses in high school, but like it wasn't like it was weird.
Yeah.
Um, we did mostly incline and bench. Those were our two main pressing movements. And so the trainer pretty much was just like, yeah, like you're gonna have shoulder pain the rest of your life if you don't start like working on your upper back. Because I believe it or not, like I didn't know upper back work.
Yeah.
I would row every once in a while, but that was about it. And so I started doing overhead pressing, push presses, strict presses, all sorts of other stuff. And like lo and behold, like my shoulder pain started to go away. And then, as I went through college, like I have a double major in exercise science and physical education. So I just kind of, would just do a little bit of research here and there and stuff like that. And then just one of the things that I kind of opened my eyes is you had to do an assessment analysis in terms of musculature used for a main lift, and I chose the strict press. And so when you start going through like the movement analysis, not assessment analysis, movement analysis is what I meant to say,
Right. Yeah.
where it talks about the different musculatures involved and stuff like that. And we did the thing where like you hooked up the electrodes to like
Oh,
the
cool.
the body and stuff like that, and the amount of upper back activation that occurred with a strict press. And then, our inquiring minds got really curious. And then we're like, can we just do this with a bench press and see? Now, I know there's going to be power lifters that are going to comment on here and be like, if you're not using your back when you bench press, you're doing it wrong. You are 100% correct. I am not saying that you don't use your upper back when you bench press. I am saying the amount of recruitment and activation in the strict press versus the bench press is exponentially higher. And so when you start thinking about things like your overhead position, your posture, how tall you're standing, your neck strength, all of that stuff, the overhead pressing actually contributes positively more to that sense. So for like my older populations, that like I have a client that I work with that's like in like their late 50s, early 60s. We don't do any bench pressing just because I want to make sure that they're continuing to work on being as upright and have good posture as long as possible. So they do more overhead pressing, like you said, whether it's dumbbells, kettlebells, bands,
Yeah.
bars, whatever it is. And so it's one of those situations where um, I don't think a lot of people in the weightlifting space either realize, because when weightlifters talk, they'll do push presses or they'll do bench press or something like that. But the strict press used to be a contested lift. And now,
Mm,
granted, like it got eliminated because it was getting hard to judge. People were bending their knees and it was turning into
right.
essential push presses. But a standard for men at that time period, strict press was 300 pounds.
Mm,
And I don't know about you, but there are very few men that I know that like I like outside like even and I'm gonna rag on strongman for a little bit. I'm sorry, but starting with the bar at your nose, dropping it to your chest and pressing is not a strict press. I'm sorry. It's
no,
building
that's not.
it's building momentum.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about from the clavicle, bar touching the clavicle, lean back press, no leg bend of whatsoever, strict press. There are not a ton of dudes that on average that can do 300 pounds plus. And so it's
Yeah.
just one of those situations where when I started coaching weightlifting, when I started overhauling accessory work and stuff like that, that was one of the things I found interesting with Glenn was Glenn did a lot of push pressing. Like we had a whole day of training dedicated to it. And so like we would push press heavy. He did use the Texas method, which is a lot of fives and stuff like that. And I got pretty good at push pressing, working through with Glenn and stuff like that. So I was just like, oh, hell yeah. So I carried this over to working with my athletes. And I also threw the strict press in there, the Z press, which is a seated strict press with no back support. Um, Banded kettlebell presses where you have the kettlebells hanging off with bands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just the ability to adapt it and create a variety of stimulus, and that overhead pressing motion has been endless. And then you fast forward to when I started getting into CrossFit after I left Muscle Driver, when I was getting into the grid stuff and things like that. I had somebody on a whim teach me how to handstand push up. And like I've always been good at overhead pressing. So I picked up handstand push-ups like immediately. And from there, then I learned how to handstand walk. I know we've talked about how when I was a teacher, I used to practice my handstand walks up and down the basketball court when I was waiting for my next class to come in. But like as that positions and that strength in there improved, lo and behold, like my snatch and my jerk, like stability and positions
Mhm.
improved as well. So it's just one of those things where if you want to look the part, like you were just talking about in terms of musculature, and all that stuff, you need to be overhead pressing, plain and simple, in some form or fashion. Like I said, whether it's with bands, dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, handstand push-ups, just holds up against the wall, whatever it is, for first and foremost your posture. Second, like you were talking about your core stability and your ability to brace better doing it. And then, like, lastly, which is shouldn't be the most important, but for a lot of people it is, just the overall look and musculature of your upper body. Like, nothing is going to build your upper body musculature up better than overhead pressing, whether it's a push press, strict press, any of these other variations that we've mentioned.
Yeah, and I mean, it shouldn't matter, but let's be honest, it does,
It
right?
does.
To people, I mean, it's the I'm a I have kind of a love-hate thing with like the body positivity thing, right?
Hmm.
Because I think that we should not shame people for the way that they look.
Hmm.
I think if you do that and you go to the gym, honestly, you're just a piece of shit.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
However, I also feel like there's a certain aspect of the body positivity movement that's negative because
I would agree with that as well.
people use it as an excuse to not take care of themselves.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I think a lot of people step into the gym with a desire to make a physiological change in
Hmm.
their appearance, and I think
Yes.
that's fine. And whatever your happy spot is for you in that,
Hmm.
good for you if you're being honest with yourself. That's the key,
100%.
right? But when we talk about like how you're building musculature to look a certain way or to achieve a certain, aesthetic, overhead pressing, there's a reason like there's an Arnold's press,
Yes.
right? And if you
Although
don't know,
that is one of my favorite dumbbell exercises. It targets all three parts of the shoulder.
yeah, and it's amazing. And there's a reason that like he had the shoulders that he had, right?
Yeah.
As a young man. Um, And if you're a weightlifter and you're not doing strict presses, if you're not doing, dumbbell, like please, 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 if you are trying to build pressing strength, don't just go with the barbell all the time.
Mm-mm.
All the stuff you just mentioned, I
Yeah.
love all those things, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Like well, like one of my like the most evil one that I will do with athletes, I'm sure Rachel's done it and loves it to the end of the earth, is pressing from a split position with the kettlebells hanging off the barbell in the band. You want to
yeah,
talk about like a humbling experience where like you're just gonna end up probably just doing the barbell for your sets of five or three or whatever I have programmed. Like that is a really great exercise. Getting down in that split position, having a barbell. And so what we're talking about is you shorten the bands up. So you wrap the band, you put the band through the loops or through the handle of the kettlebell, and then you wrap it around the bar end of the barbell. If you have a bamboo bar, you can use that too, but most people don't have access to one of those. But this has been my alternative. And so you're literally trying to press from your split position while you've got these kettlebells. Or you could use change plates too if you don't have it light enough kettlebells. But like you have a weight hanging like a pendulum from the bar. So not only are you working on that overhead strength in terms of creating that lockout, but you're also trying to stabilize the load as you're pressing up overhead. Though
Yeah.
that variation is one of my favorites to humble people real quick in terms of like, and like you were talking about in terms of assessment, in terms of their efficiency. Like if I see people cheating on their strict presses, which like I said, there's a lot of ways to do so. Like I said,
Yep.
when I see strongmen starting with the bar at their nose or their mouth and then there, I'll throw the bands on there and I'll be like, have fun trying to counter the band bottoming out from you doing that kind of nonsense. Like
That's
it's
a good
it's
one. Yeah.
it's one of my favorite, like it's an equalizer. And like
Yeah.
right now, like I'm in the middle of rebuilding, all of my, barbell lists and stuff like that. That is going to be a staple in what I do. I love it. It's a great one. Would not recommend it for push presses. You can if you want. I just don't feel like the feedback that I get from it is
Yeah.
what I'm looking for. But strict pressing with bands or with a band of kettlebell hanging off the side, that is A1.
One of my favorites, if you have poor shoulder strength,
Yeah.
right? And you're trying to build, and it's due to like stability, because
Yeah.
I think you have two different issues with shoulder strength, right? So you talked about being able to do handstand push-ups. That used to be like way back in the day when, you know, I
Yeah.
drank and did all that stuff. Um, I could do handstand push-ups drunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was my party trick. I could do them sober too, but it was like my drunken party trick. I could be like, hey, and I could rattle off like sets of 10
Yeah. Yeah.
drunk upside down. Now that you would think would translate into a super strong overhead press. The problem was like the stability when coming off the shoulder right into the press wasn't the same as pressing my body from, pressing my body upside down. It just didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't translate well. Um, because my shoulder stability was a little
Hmm.
wonky. However, bottom up kettlebell press,
Mm. Yes. Love bottom up kettlebell presses.
right? So two things there. One, if you have poor like wrist strength
Yes.
and grip strength, which we know is critical if you're pulling something from the floor, there is nothing I think that equalizes the ability or that has the ability to improve that grip strength in your wrist and in your grip that a bottom up kettlebell press has.
Hmm.
And it's going to humble you really fast
Oh
because
yeah.
you may think, oh man, I can press dumbbells, all day long. I can do hundreds, whatever it is. Okay, well, here's an 18-pound kettlebell,
Right.
right? And we're going to start here, and you're going to press straight up
Yep. Yep.
and
Yep.
and maintain that good position. And what you always see is like somebody starts moving, and then all of a sudden, like, boom,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that thing happens, or their arm is doing this, and it's just one of my favorites for especially like people who are really trying to develop a strong overhead position in their snatch, strong overhead position in their jerk, kettlebell bottom up press. I love
Hmm.
those things.
No, I agree.
Um,
Taking it one step further, I had a coach when I was doing like the grid stuff or whatever, because my stability was a big issue, is he
yeah.
would have me do the bottom up kettlebell press like walks, like holds.
Yes. Yep.
So holding the
Love
kettlebell
those.
upside down and like doing single arm, double arm, like both arms at the same time. That was brutal. Like, and I have really good like wrist and forearm strength and stuff like that. And I love bottom up kettlebell presses, but like doing a single arm hold and walking was a whole other ball game. And I was just like, this is terrible.
So good
I
though.
don't ever want to do this ever again.
I think
And
I think one of the things now that we've touched on both with the squat and now with this press, right, is the
which
common theme
which means we only have deadlift left.
I know, I love deadlift. But and
You
it's
just
going to be
Oh my God, I just got that was an acre man. I love lamp. Like
yes,
that was
I
just
thought about it too. The minute it came out of my mouth, I was like, I'm just going to sit there and be like, I love deadlift.
yeah.
But and this is going to apply to the deadlift as well, right? Is these things require a strong core
Hmm.
to be good at these things and to be
Yeah.
safe at these
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
right?
100%.
And this is one of those things I will give CrossFit credit for is they talked a lot about in the early days, and I don't know that they cover it as much now, but they did early on, and you'll probably remember this, is early on in the L1, they talked a lot about how everything was a core to extremity movement.
Always. When I do my level ones, I still talk about core to extremity in terms of programming.
Yeah.
Like, or for two things, I talk about it in terms of core to extremity, in terms of programming, and then when we're talking about movement assessment, I'm always
Mm.
looking when I like, I reference your wife all the time, but Rachel could tell you, like when I'm doing my video feedback, it starts core. I start core to extremity in terms of what I'm focusing on, because if you're not braced in your midline and everything like that, I know it's a CrossFit term, suck it, I'm using it. Um, but if you're not braced in your midline, if you're not, keeping that good tight position through the center of your gravity, like everything else is going to be fucked. And so
Yeah.
it's one of those situations where, like, yeah, like I remember in my level one them talking about that, and that kind of like I knew about core to extremity before then, but I didn't fully comprehend it until I think his name's Joe DeGaines.
Mm.
He ran my level one. He was out of Detroit, awesome
Okay.
moderator. He was, one of my favorite CrossFit people that I talked to. But he was the one, the way he explained it, I was like, oh yeah. And so when I started doing the level ones for USA weightlifting, I always talk about core to extremity when we're talking about programming in terms of accessory work. And then when you're talking about movement assessment and giving video feedback critiques or any sort of analysis, whether it's in person or through video or whatever.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I try to explain to people who are, like football fans or baseball fans,
Yeah, yeah.
as an example of saying, hey, look, if you don't think that it's core to extremity, I want you to think about a pitcher that
Hmm.
throws 100 miles an hour. And in that windup, everything generates starting from here
Yeah.
and extends out.
Yeah.
And the example, I'll take it a step further. I mean, like, can you imagine a Major League Baseball pitcher standing there, taking a step forward and doing that and still
Right.
managing to be successful? And everybody's like, absolutely not. Like,
Right.
right, because they're not building that power from here
Mhm.
and then extending it out. Everything needs to be done. And so when we look at movements that do that, and I'm glad you brought up deadlift, right? But if we're talking about pressing movements that do that, yes, there is a certain amount of core strength that you have to be able to bench, but it pales in comparison to doing overhead pressing work.
Agreed. But I would also counter that simply with the really high end bench pressers. And I'm always going to talk about David Hoff. He's the
Yeah.
last guy to total 3,000 pounds. He's totaled it more times than anybody else. I think he's got like three or four times he's totaled over
Yeah.
3,000 on his belt. Yes, he uses gear and all that stuff, but listening to him explain the setup for his bench
Yeah.
press in terms of creating that brace, wedging himself on the pad under the bar and all that stuff, like that was he wasn't the one that I originally listened to, but it was another West Side guy. I'm drawing a blank on his name at the time. But they talked about like the leg drive and how you can't get leg drive unless you know how to brace. And like once I learned that as
100%.
a
Yeah.
thrower in college, like I used to strain my hip flexors because once I realized how to brace better, and like I immediately added like 50 pounds to what my working sets. Like I was like a mid threes, low fours guy, and like I think the most I've ever bench pressed is I did 440 for a set of five or something like
Yeah.
that. But it's not because of like I got stronger triceps or I got stronger chest or shoulders or whatever. It was literally because I figured out how to wedge on the bench,
Yeah.
brace, and use that as I'm driving the bar off of the chest or whatever. But yes, I will agree. Like that is a like very minuscule skill that like you're only going to be able to get so much out of, and it's also a lot easier to implement that once you know how to do it because you have something rigid like the bench
Yeah.
to push off of and the floor to push off of versus like an overhead press. You've literally, excuse me, you literally just have your feet rooted in the ground, and that is it. That is all you have to drive off of. So like everything else has to come from here. So I would say that when it comes to benching versus overhead pressing, yes, the brace matters, and those who are really good at it know how to brace. But the ability to not only create that brace and maintain that brace is a lot harder to do on an overhead press than it is with a bench press due to the rigidity of the floor and the
Yeah.
bench that you have to push off of.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that you see, that I see anyway within like the realm of like a CrossFit class. And I'm not talking about like elite competitive folks. I'm talking about just everyday folks coming in and doing CrossFit for an extended period of time is you can tell who has learned to brace and who has not
Yeah,
really fast with postural movement issues,
agreed.
right? You talk about like, your rounded back issue. But when you watch you lift, there's no question like you're bracing.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas with somebody who doesn't have that issue and you start to see that rounding happen, or you start to see somebody in a strict press overextend their back
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
try and turn it into more of a bench movement than a strict press movement, like learn how to brace.
Yeah.
And when you learn how to brace and you start doing these things, what you're going to find out is like your core is going to get stronger every time you squat. Your core is
100%.
going to get stronger every time you press overhead. Your core is going to get stronger from deadlifting. Your core is going to, but only if you learn how to brace. Because if you don't learn how to brace and you do those things, one, your weight is going to be limited, like we talked about in the squat, but also like we talked about in our squat conversation, the opportunity for injury
Yes.
is going to be significantly higher.
Agreed. Agreed.
Like people who always like, oh, every time I squat, I hurt my back. And then I see them squat and I'm like, well, I think I figured out what your problem is.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
it's just it's one of those situations where yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Now in terms of like, because everybody's gonna be like, oh, you guys are talking so much about the pressing motion itself. Like, how do we actually make this better? What is your um what are some accessory movements? Like we talked about all the different variations and stuff like that. But one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about is like big thing that I'm noticing too, especially with like more Gen Pop and stuff like that, is like yes, you can do the compound movements all the time. I literally before we got on here today, I just saw another person posting about it, is accessory work in
mm,
terms of building up. One of the biggest things with that gentleman that I told you that added 50 pounds, it wasn't the rotations of the exercises per se. It was from the first time he benched, I noticed that his tricep capacity and his tricep strength was very lacking compared to his shoulders. Like his triceps were giving out before his shoulders were.
yeah,
And so, not only did we rotate the variations to build up more of his upper back to do all this other stuff, but we also hammered triceps. So I was just curious, and like, and if you are trying to build up your pressing, your handstand push-upping and stuff like that, you need to be dedicating. One of my rules of thumbs with programming, no matter the sport, is I try to get 100 reps of tricep work in throughout a week of training, no matter whether you're
yeah,
training 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Obviously, like 3 days and 100 reps of triceps is a tough call, but I try to. And that I include
yeah,
like your warm-ups, your warm-up movements, your main lifts, your strength lifts, your accessory work. I count all of that tonnage in there. But with that being said, and then I also, depending on certain athletes that I do more individualized stuff for, I try to operate with the Louis Simmons quote of like every training block, you're trying to beat the tonnage from the last block. So like if I have somebody who accumulates like 58 reps of tricep work, I'm trying to get them in that 60 plus range, the next training
yeah,
block, and so on and so forth. Yes, you're going to get to a point where the volume is going to get too high. Then what you start focusing on is the amount of like tonnage that is moved in that rep
yes.
range, and then you try to beat the tonnage and stuff. But my question for you, to wrap this all up here, is like, what are like your three favorite tricep accessory movements that people could start incorporating to help increase their overhead strength on top of doing all these different variations from the bottom up press, the banded kettlebell press, strict
Yeah.
press, push press, all of that stuff.
So let's start with Tate press.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
have,
that's a new
I,
one that I've started doing.
same, like, and I'm going to say I started doing that within the last couple of years. And I'd never run across it before. And I remember thinking somebody told me taint press. And I was like,
Hmm.
I don't think that's going to help my tricep, but whatever.
No.
Um, but I've come to like it more than skull crushers.
Yes.
And for those of you that don't know what a tape press is, right, you're going to have two dumbbells here, just like you're pressing, and then you're bringing them in to
Hmm.
here and then back out. And
I call it a cheerleader press.
it is, that's it. I like that one too. But I have found from a movement standpoint, it feels much better on my elbows
Hmm.
than doing skull crushers. Now, don't get me wrong, skull crushers
Yeah, yeah,
are fantastic, and I still like to do skull crushers. But
yeah, yeah.
when it comes to if I have, because I'm 53, and sometimes
Damn.
things don't feel great,
Yeah,
right? So sometimes doing skull crushers, I can feel it
yeah,
like
yeah.
in my elbow more, and I'm like, ah,
All
but
right.
tape press, really
What's your
good.
other? What are your other two? I know you.
Uh, so this one is a body weight movement, and I still think it's one of the best if you're trying to build good triceps.
I think you
Diamond push-ups.
love it. Yeah.
Diamond push-ups are like you hardly see anybody really do them,
Hmm.
but when they're done right, man, you're gonna build some tricep
Oh yeah, yeah,
endurance and strength like
yeah,
like nothing else. And then if you're one of those likes to use a lot of machines and Globo Gym stuff, and I do, I love going in and
yeah,
doing some cable work, using tricep press downs with like a or tricep pull downs with like a rope.
yeah.
Right.
Nice.
Let's just get old school. Like you can load up heavy. And when you're talking about getting 100 reps in, you
Yeah.
go light and do sets of
Oh
30.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like it's just great. So tape press when I want to like that little bit of stability, really targeting right in a different way. Diamond push-ups, if you don't have any weight anywhere, like
Hmm.
fucking do them, man.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's good for your core too. Again, the core
Right,
thing.
right, right.
And then just for fun, right? But will definitely build that tricep strength like that rope
Yeah.
tricep pressing. What
You
about you?
took you took one of mine, but I got a ton of my hat here. My number one overall is rolling triceps. Similar reason you talked about with
Yeah.
skull crusher. So for those who don't know what a rolling tricep is, dumbbell starts here, you bring it to your chest, roll back behind the head, bring it back down, and then like use that momentum to press.
Yeah.
It's very similar to a skull
So
crusher, but
cool.
I like this added momentum, and it also just hits the tricep in a weird way with that stretch where like after you do them, you don't feel much, but like 2 days later, your triceps are going to be like crippling sore from the
Yeah.
exercise. Rolling
Yep.
triceps is the number one that I program.
Same.
Another one is you were talking about body weight stuff. I love dips, whether they're weighted or not,
Yes.
but not on a ring. I don't like the ring. I like the little Matterhorns, and I've got a bunch of different
Yep.
setups that you can do and stuff like that. But like tricep dips, body weight dips,
Yes.
and stuff like that, they're in my opinion, like that's a good indicator of where your overhead strength is getting if you can do your body weight for like a set of five, like a good set of five. And I'm not talking about the vertical torso, like the arms back behind. I am talking about like the gymnast style, where the shoulder is over the wrist and you are bringing your chest
Yeah.
to whatever you're dipping and then pressing yourself to that full lockout. And then my third one, which is people like always like turn their head when I say this, but a straight arm pull down. You're talking about
Oh
flip machines
yeah.
and stuff like that. Straight arm pull down, arms are just out here, keeping the arms locked out,
Dude.
whether your hands are, in this grip or this grip, and you're bringing it down to the pockets. The tricep gets worked so much in terms of having to keep that elbow straight. It's a little bit of a combo, like isometric, and then
Yeah.
that contraction that you're getting at the bottom of the movement. But those are my three favorite exercises to build up the triceps.
Those
Can't
are
really
great.
go wrong. I kind of went off of you, and I was like, I went with a dumbbell, I went a body weight, and then I went a cable. But those are my three favorites. I do love tape presses though. That's becoming like one of my second favorites, especially working with a lot of weightlifters. Like you get elbow injuries, you get tendonitis. I'm trying to prevent overuse stuff. So like I will rotate really heavily between tape presses and rolling triceps in terms of like that tricep
Yeah.
specific work that we're looking for in like that 15 to 20 rep range.
Yeah, the rolling triceps a nice one too. I forgot about that. Like everything you said is like dead on, and I love all
Yeah.
those. Those are so good.
Yeah, if you took any of those exercises, like I said, we didn't mean to do it this way, but we did a dumbbell, we did a body weight, and we did a cable. For the dumbbell, if you could do a couple sets of like 15 to 20 reps, you're going to be golden with that. You're going
Yeah.
to be building your triceps up. That body weight in that like 8 to 12 range, I feel like if you can hit a couple sets there in that 8 to 12, you're going to be golden. And then those cable exercises that we gave you, if you're in like that 20 to 30 range as a
Yeah.
little bit of a burnout at the end of your workout, you're going to have some serious triceps growing and it's going to help with that overhead pressing strength. So,
Yep.
with that being said, let's go ahead and wrap this up and bring it on home. So in wrap, Oregon is probably going to lose in the first round of the college football playoff, and
Motherfucker.
no, they're not. They're not. I want them. They're going to destroy JMU. I will say this though, the only thing I was really upset about, and it just didn't make for good TV, is Notre Dame was supposed to go to Oregon in that spot.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I'm gonna say this. Like I gave you shit earlier when we were arguing
Yeah,
about Notre Dame, but I have a real big soft spot in my heart for Notre Dame. The high school I went to was the Fighting Irish. So how do
yeah,
you
yeah,
not end up like having a
yeah.
soft spot? And plus, Lou Holtz, dude, if you're a college football
Love me
fan,
some Lou Holtz.
Lou Holtz,
I've
right? Like
got, I've got a sign, play like a champion thing right above my door from him.
right? Like he was like and will always be just a coaching legend.
Yeah.
So But yeah, when Notre Dame got left out, I was
Yeah,
super bummed. I
they
was
were
like,
they were supposed to go to Oregon. That was
that would have been like the best
they were
game.
in JMU's spot. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, good luck to everybody in their college football teams in the playoff. We talked about some triceps. We talked about some overhead strength. If you
Unless
are,
you're Alabama, if you're an Alabama fan.
yeah, if you're an Alabama fan, kick rocks. Sorry.
Yeah. You don't belong.
Um, no.
Just kidding.
Um,
We
we talked
just
about,
lost like
yeah,
so
yeah,
many
yeah,
people too.
yeah,
They're like,
yeah. Half
I'm
the
an
people are
Alabama
like,
fan.
yeah,
Fuck you guys.
all eight of the people that listen to us, like
Yeah, I'll hit them.
six of them are like, fuck these guys.
Yeah.
Um, but we talked about overhead strength. If you are not incorporating overhead strength into your training, please start doing so. Great way
Yeah.
to do so is sign up for the Strength Agenda app, go to Everyday Strength or Everyday Power. Even though the power focuses more on squat, bench, dead, there is a lot of overhead pressing in there. Our weightlifting programs have a dedicated day to overhead work in terms of building your strength. It's going to benefit you in a lot of ways, from posture to bracing and just overall looking better when you're walking around in public so people know that you actually lift. And then we gave you just kind of a quick rundown on tricep exercises, things along those lines. We talked about the holiday specials. You got to go to the newsletter, go to the Strength Agenda page to check out how to sign up for that. And is there anything else I missed, John?
No, I think that's it.
All
Like
right.
I think we're good.
All right. We appreciate you guys. Until next time, thank you for supporting us, and we will see you guys on the platform. Take care.
Bye guys.